How's it going, everybody? My name's Shino. As you guys can tell by the title of this video, we're going to be talking about something that plagues not just BDO, but every MMORPG on the market. Outdated content. As time goes on, of course, we're going to get new content, which is going to bring new items, gear, zones, raid bosses, you name it. And every time that something like that happens, it tends to cast a shadow on our once beloved content that we had previously. So let's go ahead and let's talk about that. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump into the three things that we're going to be talking about today. And that's going to be the Red Battlefield, raiding parties, and world bosses. But first, before we get into the meat of today's video, quick disclaimer. I am by no means saying that I am an expert on any of these things and saying that any of these ideas would 100% fix any of these things. I'm just a person that's been playing the game for years, and I just wanted to kind of throw in some possible ideas that I think the devs would probably quickly be able to implement. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and kick things off. Alright, so as you guys can see here real quick, we did actually just finish an event for the Red Battlefield, where you were able to get some pretty good items just based on how many wins that you had. So like your Advice of Valks or Essence of Dawn, item collection scrolls, and even 500 cronstones if you got 9 wins. But I'm not too focused on those right now, but I do have gameplay right here so you can see how many people were actually, participating during this event. But we're more focused on what Red Battlefield is currently looking like now. And as you can see, there is no one on Valencia, and there is no one on Castle Ruins. We don't count Garmoth's Nest because I've never met a single person who enjoys Garmoth's Nest. Now, to me this is concerning, because throughout all the years that I've played BDO, there's always been a fair amount of people within the Red Battlefield. Whether, it's just like scattered throughout the channels, or there's like 60 people in one channel itself, there's always been a decent amount of people. There's never been a situation where I see absolutely no one in here outside of like early mornings when there isn't a whole lot of people online. And simply put, the reason for that is just because the rewards aren't good enough. So I do think that the way that we could help bring some traffic into the Red Battlefield is by improving the rewards. And currently the rewards go, you get 5 seals per win, 3 seals per loss. And if you guys don't know what the seals are, those are the seals that help you create your Red Battlefield crystals. And it was a lot of the way that people were making money through doing the Red Battlefield. If they were doing it that way, most people were probably just replacing their own crystals. And then you would also get 50 mil per win and 10 mil per loss in terms of your silver. So the proposed changes that I have to this, outside of, possible game modes like King of the Hill or anything like that, I don't know how any of that would work, so I'm not going to touch on any of that. But for the rewards, you could buff the 50 mil to 70 mil per win, and then you could buff the loss from 10 mil to 20 mil per win. I do have something that I think would add a nice little touch to it, and that would be win streak rewards. So if you're going on, a win streak, like let's say you have 3 wins in a row, it buffs you by 10 mil added per, win streak, capping you at 100 mil per win. And then this would just leave your loss obviously at 20 mil. But you could also possibly throw in some little extra items based on win streaks, like, hey, here's a perfume of courage after like 5 wins, or something along those lines. Again, I don't do as much PvP as I used to, so I don't know what rewards would be best fitting in a category like this, but I do think that this would really help out, the player count doing Red Battlefield. Okay, so now we're going to be touching on raiding parties. And I know whenever I said raiding parties earlier, a lot of you guys were like, yo, wait, this guy is so senile. He doesn't know what he's talking about. BDO doesn't have raids. And that's true. We don't have real raids by normal MMO standards. But the idea that I have sparked from this little clip right here. Now, I ran into this stuff when I first started the game, and it was awesome to me. Like, I absolutely loved it because it made the world feel more alive, and it was just so interesting to come across. Me personally, when I first saw that, I jumped in the middle of that group and I started whacking away at all of them. I was like, I'm gonna help this town, I'm gonna be a hero, right? And you realize really quickly that it's kind of pointless, and you don't get any rewards for it. So how would we fix this? How would we be able to make this something interesting? And I've got a couple of ideas. Now, the first idea that I have is make this something that happens across the world. There are monster zones surrounding all the towns, right? So I feel that we could genuinely make this an event that happens across the world. Something happens that causes the monsters to go berserk and they leave their normal habitats. Like, for example, Hadam's presence has caused the monsters to go insane in an area, and they're now raiding the towns. They're like berserk, they're a little bit stronger, and they're raiding the towns in the area. But for reward wise, how could this work? Because currently they only drop like a little seal, and that little seal you can sell for, I think it's like 200 silver or something like that. I don't remember. But I think it would be cool, for example, like in higher scale areas, right? We'll go ahead and we'll use Darkseekers, right? Like, let's say that they're raiding the town and you just randomly drop like a flame. I think that'd be insane, right? But obviously their drop rates are going to stay the same, but just give them the ability to show up in these areas and us be able to kill them and have some, you know, crazy lucky instances of someone getting some of these crazy treasure items. But I also think that we could make it to where if you participate in these events, it levels up the town node, and we're going to use this to kind of segue back into like investment banking in a sense, right? Like, if you have a higher level in the town, you could make it to where, oh, your trash loot sells a little bit better in that area if it is, you know, specific around those mobs and it's only like a temporary thing. Or you could make it to where if you participate in this, you have an amity buff to where you can get more amity with the NPCs that are in that area. Those are just some quick little ways that I think that, you know, you could spice this up and bring this back. But another section to raiding parties that I'm referring to is something that a lot of us used to do for fun. A lot of us, as you guys can see, I'm at Kadri Ruins. A lot of us used to go through and run Guardians. Now, we would go to Kadri's, we would go out to Crescent Shrine, and we would just form parties and just run trains through all of these like kind of special bosses. And there's another one that I do want to touch on that I'm going to go ahead and just put a clip up over here. The giant mutant ogre in Calpheon. We need more stuff like that. You know, make them worthwhile to do, but we need more stuff like that. Stuff like that just randomly out in the world that's not some, like, you know, announced world boss spawn or, you know, a field boss. I think stuff like that is just so cool to have, and I think we could have a lot of fun with it. Alright, guys. Last and certainly not least, we've got world bosses. Now, I'm just going to rip the band-aid off on this, but world bosses are in the worst state that I've ever seen them. And it sucks because world bosses are some of the coolest things, in my opinion, across like MMOs. Like, there's nothing more exhilarating than having a giant fight with a bunch of players on the server trying to take down this huge monster, right? The only thing better than that is the loot that you get from being like the #1 person on the server that gets that super rare drop, right? Like, just getting super lucky and getting that very rare drop. But you don't get that with world bosses in BDO outside of like Vel, Garmoth, and, you know, Nuver if you're trying to go for the costume and stuff like that. But even then, it's kind of meh. I mean, the Land of the Morning Light bosses, yeah, because people are still trying to get their sovereign weapons. But every other boss outside of that, it's just completely forgotten. Especially Quint, Maraka, and Offen. We'll get to those bosses later. But the current loot pools for the world bosses have become so outdated that it's caused a lack of attendance. And I honestly think that we can fix this. Like, with the introduction of Nightmare variants like Nightmare Zarka, Stormbringer, Karanda, Thundercloud, Kudum, and Bloodstorm Nuver, we had picked attendance up on it. And, you know, the boxes were huge and stuff like that. But that's the big issue. The weapon boxes. The weapon boxes and Belongings of Adventure specifically, you know, these being like the two best like drops that you can get from world bosses currently, it's laughable. Belongings of Adventure, the best item I can get is an ogre ring. And like right now, like I think like a duo ogre ring is like probably 200 mil or something like that. So how can we fix this? How can we fix the world bosses? Because currently the weapon boxes are pointless because we've got the addition of sovereign weapons. We've got the guaranteed pen black star and the guaranteed tep black star. So there's no reason to really have any of these other items except for Kudum. Like Kudum obviously is still the GOAT and Nuver is still the GOAT if you're doing PvP. But how else can we fix that? So the easiest way to fix it would be buffing Belonging of Adventurer, obviously. Like if we went ahead and added some of the newer accessories, like adding Debos in there, or, you know, even just giving like a Pry Karazad or something. I don't know. That would probably be a balancing issue, like a balancing nightmare, but that's just like an idea that I can throw in there. Outside of that, I think the only way that we can really help it here is introducing a new item to some of the current stagnant world bosses and make them tailored specifically to that world boss. Like, for example, we could make an item that's like the Cracked Fang of Zarka. And you could use these items with like simple alchemy or just combine them together to create like an Advice of Valks like 100 plus stack, right? But for the other world bosses, I'm specifically looking at the ones like Quint, Offen, Maraka. I'm not entirely certain how we can bring these bosses up to date, but a loot pool overhaul is absolutely something that's needed because the best item that you can get from Quint is like I think it's like a BMC Harfia, then like the Quint statue. You can get Hunter Seals, Blackstone, and Mutant Enhancer. Or like with Maraka, you can drop a Dim Ogre ring, and the best thing that you can get from that's a Duo Ogre. That's ridiculous. So, as I said, I'm not entirely certain how we could really fix those, but something would definitely have to be done, like a loot pool overhaul or something. With that in mind, I do have an idea of something that we could do for all the world bosses across, and that would be themed outfits like we did with Nuver. But instead of like making it like a massive silver sink, I think we should just make it to where they are extremely rare. Like, make me want to go to this world boss, right? Like, make it to where it's a very rare chance, but I can drop like the helmet, like a thematic helmet, or like, you know, a thematic like chest piece, something like that. You can make it to where it drops the whole thing if you want to, like make it even rare and make it special. And then like make it if you get it through just like the regular drops, like there's like, it's like a dimmed version, right? Something along those lines. But I think we can take this a step further and add mythical boss cosmetics that are exclusive to world bosses. Like, for example, Pegasus would get a Karanda themed outfit that you can only get from fighting Karanda. And like Doom would get one that you can only get from fighting Maraka or Quint, or, you know, whichever boss you choose, Zarka or whatever. And then the Uni can get an outfit from fighting like Offen. Like, make them themed outfits. Of course, you can make it open to where like all of them could get it. These are just like some examples that I'm just kind of throwing out there. And we could take it a step further. Like, we could really take this a step further and say, hey, look, you've got the Offen mythical costume set. So while you're in the land of Kama Sylvia, you get a like 5% movement speed on your horse, and you get this ability that will allow you to get like plus 10 AP or whatever for like an hour, right? Like, kind of make it like the Krogdalo buff, but just innate with the costume. I think that would absolutely be insane. What do you guys think? What are some changes you guys would like to see to some of this content? But again, these are just ideas that I've come up with that I think would be a nice welcome change. Anyways, guys, take it easy. I hope you'll have a lovely day, and see you later.